In the previous units, we discussed the biblical accounts of primordial history and their relation to ancient Near Eastern literature. From this unit on, we will examine several central genres in the Bible in light of their extra-biblical parallels. We will only be able to address a small selection of these genres. The first topic we shall investigate is biblical law in its relation to the ancient Near East. Like all human societies, ancient Near Eastern cultures had legal systems. Reflections of these systems appear in many ancient texts, written verdicts, court protocols, contracts, receipts, etc. All these sources reflect the laws of their time and place. It is difficult to identify any biblical parallel to the above-mentioned sources. The Bible is essentially a literary text. It does not preserve contracts, verdicts, or protocols. There is, however, one legal genre that forms an exception, namely law collections. As a religious text, the Bible includes numerous laws. Most of these are organized in large collections. Similar legal collections are known from several places across the ancient Near East, especially Mesopotamia. Many ancient Near Eastern law codes are associated with specific kings. The king in these collections appears as royal legislator and, more importantly, the source of law and the defender of justice. For this reason, many of the collections we will shortly present are named after kings. However, there are also other collections not attributed to a specific king. These collections are usually labeled according to their origin. We will now briefly present the main ancient Near Eastern legal collections known to us in chronological order. Reading recommendations and more information about each can be found on the course website. 1. Laws of Ur-Nammu. This is the oldest known law code. It is written in Sumerian and composed by the scribes of King Ur-Nammu, the founder of the Ur-3 dynasty around 2100 BCE. 2. Laws of Lipit Ishtar. This law code was also written in Sumerian around 1900 BCE by the scribes of the king Lipit Ishtar, who ruled the kingdom of Isin. 3. Laws of Eshnuna. This law code is a little later. It was composed around 1770 in Akkadian. The code is not attributed to a specific king. It is named after the city where it was written. 4. Code of Hammurabi. This is the best-known law code. It is a long and neatly organized collection. It was written in Akkadian at the court of the great Babylonian king Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi probably dates to around 1750 BCE. Laws from earlier periods arrived us on school tablets. However, the Code of Hammurabi is mainly known from a large royal stele. The stele shows the king standing before Shamash, the Mesopotamian sun god, who also served as the god of justice and was associated with the legal system. Beneath the relief are around 300 laws, with a prologue and an epilogue describing Hammurabi as the king of justice. Probably additional monuments like the one known to us were erected throughout the kingdom, but they were never found. Parts of the Code of Hammurabi were also copied on clay tablets in schools across Babylon. This code was considered a classic. It thus continued to be copied for centuries after the time of its composition.
Here we have a couple of fragments of ancient law code. So this one is from the laws of Hammurabi, and this one is from the laws of another king, Lipit Ishtar. And one of the most important duties of the king on earth was to ensure justice in the land. So Shamash, the god of justice, hands the rod and the ring, the symbols of justice, to the king, and the king takes them and enacts on earth what Shamash ordains from heaven, effectively. And we know actually that the kings get involved at quite a detailed level in sorting out who owns these sheep, this bit of property. It's if you like, the highest appeal court in the land. You can go before the king, and as the just king, he will make sure everything is correct. Nobody is abusing their position. Justice also manifests in a number of slightly more abstract ways, and the law codes are part of that. The classic is, of course, Hammurabi. We all know about him from the famous stela found in Iran, now in the Louvre in Paris, but it's an example of something which was much more common at the time. A number of kings have produced codes like this, and they became classics very quickly. So they're copied by scribes at the time and for future generations. So 1,000 years later, scribes in both Assyria and Babylonia are still copying the code of Hammurabi onto documents. So we have many manuscripts where they've just been handed down like we might do with Shakespeare or something. They honour the great ancient kings of the past and their justice and their wisdom, and this is part of that process.
5. Middle Assyrian laws. This collection is written in Akkadian and was probably composed during the 13th century BCE. 6. Neo-Babylonian laws. These Akkadian laws were composed during the Neo-Babylonian period and do not appear to be attributed to a specific king. They date to around 700 BCE. 7. Hittite laws. This collection comes from outside Mesopotamia, from the Hittite kingdom, also known as Hatti. In the previous units, we did not have a chance to look at this kingdom and its contribution to the comparative study of the Bible. Here are some basic details. Hatti was located in Anatolia. Its political and cultural peak occurred between the 17th and 12th century BCE. The inhabitants of Hatti did not speak a Semitic language. They spoke and wrote Hittite, an Indo-European language written in cuneiform script. The Hittites had no direct contact with Israel during the biblical period, yet several striking affinities exist between Hittite and biblical cultures. Most of these parallels will not be discussed in our course because they regard cultic and contract literature, two genres that unfortunately we do not have time to discuss. Yet some parallels appear in the field of legislation. The Hittite laws are, of course, written in Hittite. They were probably composed during the 16th century BCE and then copied repeatedly through the 12th century BCE. We have briefly introduced 7 important law collections from Mesopotamia and Hatti. In the following lectures, we will explore some of the ways in which they contribute to our understanding of biblical law.